All right, so we're back with part 2. So really quick, let me just kind of review a little bit. How did an assassination lead to an all-out war in just a few weeks? During the war, each side blamed the other. Afterwards, victorious allies learned to blame Germany at the end of the war. In the green box in the middle, each great power believed its cause was just. Austria wanted to punish Serbia for encouraging terrorism. Remember the assassination of the Archduke. Germany felt that it must stand by its one dependable ally, which is Austria-Hungary. Russia saw Austrian ultimatum to Serbia as an effort to oppress Slavic people. So we'll talk about the ultimatum here at the end when we do our chart. And then on the final box at the bottom, France feared that it did not support Russia. If they didn't support Russia, it would have to face Germany alone later. Britain felt committed to protect Belgium because of the treaty, but they also feared the growing power of Germany with their huge military. So here, if I had a black and white map, for example, like on a test, hopefully you would be able to label who is on what team, okay? So here on the bottom, I think my video covers it up, but remember Triple Alliance, that's the same as the Central Powers. Triple Entente, that's the Allies, okay? Russian allies, this is when we get into more detailed stuff, so don't worry about that specifically. But on your chart in your notes, you should have had under Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary. Under Allies, Russia, Great Britain or the UK, France, Belgium, Serbia. Then neutral nations that later joined the Central Powers, we have Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire. And then neutral nations that later joined the Allies, we have Italy, Romania, Portugal, Greece. So here you should have that on your guided notes. So the snowball effect into the war. Once the machinery of the war was set in motion, with the Austrian ultimatum and mobilization of troops, political leaders could no longer save the peace. What I mean by this is the idea of this sort of war, the snowball effect, that one little thing sparked and just became bigger and bigger and bigger. Although government leaders made the decisions, most people on both sides were committed to military action. Young men rushed to enlist, cheered on by women and their elders, now that the war had come at last. It seemed like an exciting adventure. What I mean by this, okay, when you look at this picture in the back, you can notice that these men and these women, they look happy to join the war. What was happening during this time period was that it was a statement, this nationalism statement that you're going to do something to defend your country. And if you stayed behind, people would wonder, do you even care for your country? So it was kind of like a fad to actually be encouraged and actually want to go to the military, as opposed to right now that if we were drafted, it would be kind of scary today in 2021. The culture shifted a little bit. People were excited to join the military because who wanted to be left behind with the women, the children, etc., when you can go and earn your right and you can earn your nation's honor by being able to defend them, right? So here in the picture, you can notice the women, this is the French military. They're actually cheering on the French men that are joining the military, like, go to war, you can do it, be a man. This sort of like prideful nationalism idea in a country. So here we have a quote. If we were in class, I would read this out loud, but 1 out of every 4 men who went out to the World War did not come back again, recalled a survivor. And of those who came back, many were maimed and blind and some mad. Maimed basically means like disformed or some sort of like injury took place. They were blind. Some of them, the whole idea of PTSD wasn't really a diagnosis yet. And so this idea that these men would come back and like they felt like shells of people. They weren't actually like who they were before the war. But 1 out of every 4, they wouldn't come back. Look around the room, or maybe think about how many people are in your classes, and 1 out of every 4, if they weren't there, that's a pretty significant number, 25%. So, stalemate on the Western Front. So, as the war began, German forces fought their way through Belgium through Paris. Remember the Schlieffen Plan, right? They were following the Schlieffen Plan, and the Belgians, they did their best to resist, but remember, they were neutral. More than German generals they expected. So German generals, they didn't expect that Belgians would be able to resist, but Belgians, they actually did resist more than the generals expected. But the German forces, they did eventually prevail and take over. However, Germany's plans for a quick defeat of France soon failed. So here, we got the Schlieffen Plan fail, okay? So the whole point of the Schlieffen Plan was Germany was going to first swing in through Belgium and attack from behind, right? Oops, not through Switzerland, sorry. Swing in through Belgium and attack from behind in France. Then they were going to keep going and then attack Russia, right? So, how this failed for them, because the Schlieffen Plan did not work. 1, Russia mobilized their troops way quicker than Germans expected. So when Germany was over here in France doing whatever, Russia was already starting to invade the Eastern Front right here, okay? Then, number 2, after Russian forces won a few small victories in Eastern Prussia, German generals hastily shifted troops to the east, weakening the west. So now that Germany their troops are all right here in France, right? They were waiting to finish off France before going to Russia. But now that Russia mobilized quickly, the German generals, they decided to split up half of their military in France and send the other half to Russia, but that just made them half as weak, okay? Then finally, number 3, then in September 1914, British and French troops pushed back the German drive along the Marne River. This is the Battle of Marne. The first battle of the Marne ended Germany's hopes for a quick victory in the Western Front. Because Germany had half of their troops, France and Britain, they were able to win that battle. Then Germany, having only half of the troops here in Russia, did not win that either. So the Schlieffen Plan failed. Remember that we had the pictures here, what the Schlieffen Plan was supposed to be? Fail, okay? Oops, I can't even spell fail. Fail, okay? So this started what was known as trench warfare. When the fronts were starting to fight against each other, both sides then began to dig deep trenches to protect their armies from fierce enemy fire. They did not know that the conflict would turn into a long, deadly stalemate. In your notes, you should have an area to identify what a stalemate is. A stalemate is a deadlock where neither side is able to defeat the other. You can have a stalemate in a game of chess, for example, where no person can win because neither side can defeat the other side, correct? A stalemate, no side on either trench could take over and could defeat the other side. Battle lines in France would remain almost unchanged for the next 4 years. And that is kind of how World War I starts, this whole trench warfare. We're going to talk about trench warfare next time, but I want to fill out this chart with you guys to make sure